Pakistan. India, of course, has been sharing its concerns over the issue of cross-border terrorism. So there will be several issues on the table when both leaders meet. But one thing is for sure, that when it comes to the SCO outcomes, the focus will be on as to how leaders can find convergences at a time when Donald Trump's tariffs have been the big key concern. In fact, we know that when it comes to Donald Trump's tariffs on India, this has been a global headline in many ways. Approximately of the 50% tariffs that have been imposed, 25% because India has been importing crude oil, energy from Russia. India has been, of course, clear on that part, that as its sovereign right, it has the right to import energy and take care of its own energy policy and energy security. So there are several things simultaneously happening when it comes to globally. But this summit is coming at a very pivotal time when we have seen a lot of division, whether it is east versus west, north versus south, and of course the key crucial issue, of course, remains the war in Ukraine. How much there will be discussion on that as well, because remember that Russia is a key, in fact, the founding member of this grouping, and we know that the focus for Russia, for India, for China are similar things, which includes how to deal with terrorism, how to bring about more regional cooperation, and of course connectivity. In fact, every SCO summit, one thing has been common from the Indian side is the focus on the Chabahar port project in Iran that India has been supporting. And we know that when it comes to Iran's participation, it recently became a full member of this mega grouping.
Very key issues that you pointed out that we will be looking forward to, which we see in the summit as we go by. But thank you so much, Zidane, for joining us and giving the details. We'll come back to you after we see some more developments. And we'll move into West Asia. The deadly strike has upended the balance in the region. The Houthis' prime minister is killed in a dramatic Israeli missile attack. Yemen erupts in rage, vowing a fierce revenge. Now, with thunderous force, Israeli warplanes blasted a site where the senior Houthi leadership had assembled for a meeting in capital Sana'a. On Thursday, Israeli forces had said they struck a Houthi regime military target. The Yemen-based rebels have now confirmed that their prime minister is dead. Ghalib Nasser al-Rahawi is the most senior official known to have died in a series of attacks during the Gaza war. Now, tens of thousands of Yemenis gathered in the Al-Sabin Square in the capital Sana'a in various locations in Houthi-controlled areas to protest against Israeli airstrikes. The protesters say that they are opposing Israeli airstrikes in Yemen and the military operations in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and express their solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Israel's bombings and brutal aggression will not shake the stance of the Houthi armed forces and the Yemeni people in supporting the Palestinian people. International law clearly stipulates that in the face of genocide, any country has an obligation to intervene.
The Houthis have appointed Deputy Prime Minister Mohammed Ahmed Miftah as interim Prime Minister following Rahawi's death. For months, the Houthis have fired their own missiles towards Israel, which is about 2,000 kilometers away. Now, Israel's jets have hit Houthi targets before. The Americans, too, have launched coordinated airstrikes on Houthi hideouts. The European Union foreign ministers met in Copenhagen on Saturday, but these talks exposed deep divisions over the war in Gaza. While some countries call for stronger economic pressure on Israel, while others made clear they would not support such moves. The split has left the bloc struggling to form a common strategy.
It's clear that member states disagree on how to get Israeli government to change course. The options are clear and remain on the table. We have presented an option paper, but the problem is that not all EU member states are on board.
And Denmark warned that Israel's actions and expanding settlements are undermining the possibility of a two-state solution and said inaction could strengthen extremism.
Israel is right now undermining the two-state solution, and taking action against that is not strengthening Hamas. You could argue the opposite. Because if we do not intervene, if we do not have any actions, then we give room to the most extremist environments at both sides of the conflict.
EU ministers also urged the United States to reconsider blocking Palestinian representatives from taking part in the upcoming United Nations General Assembly. Beyond Gaza, the meeting turned to Russia's war in Ukraine, with member states asked to submit proposals for a new package of sanctions.
Ministers discussed the possible building blocks for the next sanction package. Options include secondary sanctions, those backing Russia's war, as well as import bans and tariffs on Russian products. Efforts against shadow fleet ships must also be stepped up.
In the end, Europe left Copenhagen without consensus on Gaza, but with a renewed push for unity on both West Asia and Ukraine. Moving on, anti-asylum protests continue to disrupt the socio-political landscape of the United Kingdom. British police have arrested 5 people at a latest protest in London, where a group of masked men attempted to enter a hotel housing asylum seekers. According to London's Metropolitan Police Force, 2 groups of anti-asylum protesters marched to the Crown Plaza Hotel near Heathrow Airport before some demonstrators tried to break in. 2 police officers have suffered minor injuries in the incident. And this comes a day after the British government won a court ruling that said asylum seekers will not have to be evicted from a hotel where a resident was charged with sexual assault. Last week, court ordered the removal of asylum seekers from the Bell Hotel in Epping. Now, this protest follows a series of confrontations, most recently in Epping and Liverpool, where a large number of anti-immigration protesters and counter-protesters faced off in the city center, with police forced to step in to keep the 2 sides apart. Well, a stark sign of mounting tensions over immigration have taken place. As for media reports, concern about immigration has risen to the top of the political agenda in Britain after an increase in migrants using small boats to reach the country. According to government figures, more than 32,000 migrants were being housed in around 200 hotels across the country at the end of June. A recent YouGov poll for The Times found that 71% of voters believe the Prime Minister is handling the asylum hotel issue badly, while 22% say he is managing it well, and 17% are unsure. Now, thousands of fiery redheads descended upon the Netherlands for the annual Redhead Days Festival, which is a vibrant celebration of all things ginger. Now, the 2025 Redhead Days Festival in Netherlands promises a fun-filled 3-day extravaganza featuring music, food trucks, and workshops catering specifically to redheads' needs, including makeup tutorials and skin cancer prevention advice. Expecting over several thousand attendees from around 80 countries, the festival is open to all for free. The 2013 edition of the festival had achieved a Guinness World Record for the largest gathering of people with natural red hair, with 1,672 participants in the group photo. The festival's origins date back 2 decades when Dutch artist Bart Rowenhorst advertised for the 15 red-haired models for an art project. And surprisingly, he received 10 times the expected responses, leading him to organize a photo shoot with the group. The project's massive attention prompted Rowenhorst to host a similar gathering the following year, which eventually evolved into a multi-day festival in the overseas today.
Yeah, the festival is really amazing because all the people they resemble each other and they feel like it's a family. So if you stand in line for something, you just start talking to other people and they talk back. It's really a sort of cozy experience.
The runners face severe weather as they called for the 2025 Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc, one of the toughest marathons worldwide. Slippery nighttime descents led to numerous falls and belly slides on steep mountain trails. Take a look at this report for more.
I was expecting it to be cold, but not this cold. It was terrible. We had snow as early as the Bonhomme Pass, the Seigne Pass. Very, very cold. I have the survival blanket underneath. I'm soaked. I couldn't feel my hands or my feet anymore. It's tough.
Bollywood's versatile star Rajkummar Rao turns 41 today. Born Rajkummar Yadav, Rao's rise to stardom was built on hard work, talent, and relentless drive to break into the film industry. After graduating from the Film and Television Institute of India, he made his debut in 2010, catching attention with his natural performance. He quickly became a powerhouse performer, winning the National Film Award for Shahid and giving critically acclaimed acts in films like Trapped, Newton, and Amartya. In recent years, he has balanced commercial success with meaningful cinema, with movies like Stree, Badayo, and Shrikant, showing off his range and box office appeal. But the star has also faced headlines from criticism about his physical transformations for roles to online discussions about nepotism and opportunities in Bollywood. Today, as Rajkummar Rao celebrates his 41st birthday, he stands as one of the most respected actors of his generation. And a vibrant display of unity and defiance. Hundreds of people gathered in Berlin for a dynamic celebration that has evolved from a protest against far-right ideologies into a joyous annual rave promoting freedom, solidarity, and love. We leave you with this report. Do stay tuned. News and updates follow on the other side. You're watching WION The World. Stay tuned.
siphoning it out in Gaza. Journalists are being targeted and killed. Famine is deepening, but Netanyahu remains in denial. Houthis are shocking Israel, unleashing a deadly missile with multiple warheads. And in Turkey, a cup of coffee comes with a glimpse of destiny, blending centuries of tradition with a ritual of fortune.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Redhead Francis, only on WION. World is one.
On Wings this week, we highlight this week's Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. We also visit the Symphony Orchestra of India and experience a fall season performance. We also cover exciting and vibrant festivals across the world. Only on WION, World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION, World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One. I'm Jyotsna Kumar. Thanks for staying with us. Let's begin with the headlines. World leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, Indian PM Modi, and Belarus leader Lukashenko, are among the guests who have gathered in northern Chinese city of Tianjin for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matt Whitaker says that the U.S. is giving Ukraine deeper strike capabilities to defend from Russia. The Israeli army claims a reservist was killed in a friendly fire incident in the southern Gaza Strip, bringing the number of confirmed military deaths since the start of the war to 900. Thousands of people protest against Israel's siege of Gaza on the sidelines of the Venice Film Festival, seeking to move the spotlight from movie drama to real-world trauma. Yemen's Houthi rebels vow to take revenge for the killing of their prime minister and other political leaders by Israeli airstrikes earlier this week. For the third time this year, the Yamuna River crosses its danger mark at the old railway bridge, which serves as a key observation point for tracking the river's flow. China's factory output shrank for the fifth month in a row, with August PMI at 49.4, slightly better than July, but still below the 50 growth mark. The data comes as Beijing continues trade talks with Washington ahead of the November tariff deadline. Now, anger and desperation echoed through Tel Aviv's Hostages Square as thousands of Israelis gathered to demand the return of hostages still held in Gaza and call for accountability from the country's leadership. The protesters urged the government to stop its plan to take over Gaza City, prioritize the hostages, and agree to a ceasefire. The mother of hostage Matan Zangaoker issued a direct warning to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. She said that if Netanyahu proceeds with a full occupation of Gaza and her son is killed in captivity, she will hold him accountable.
If Netanyahu chooses to conquer the Gaza Strip instead of the current outline for a deal, it will be a death sentence for our dear hostages and soldiers. He will be spilling the blood of Israeli citizens. Netanyahu, if my son Matan comes back in a body bag, not only will he and I pay the price, I will personally make sure you are charged with premeditated murder.
The protester urged U.S. President Donald Trump to make history by brokering a hostage deal. Just hours before the protest, Israeli officials confirmed the recovery of hostage Idan Shativi's body from Gaza, following a military operation that also retrieved another body of Ilan Weiss. 48 hostages remain in captivity, with only 20 believed to be alive. And in Gaza, situation remains grim, with Israel expanding its military operation. According to local medics, at least 7 people were killed and dozens injured after an Israeli strike on the Gaza city. Palestinians were seen fleeing Nuseirat with their belongings. The Red Cross warns evacuation from the city is not only feasible but incomprehensible, as there is dire state of shelter, healthcare and nutrition in the region.
We left Al-Tufa district in Gaza City because it is a dangerous area. All of Gaza City has become a dangerous area. We do not know whether we should stay in Gaza City or evacuate. Today, we are being displaced from north to south, even though we were not displaced the first time. But what is happening now is that Gaza City is no longer a safe area. It has become a completely red zone from north to south. It is all a red zone.
Israel said it would soon halt or slow humanitarian aid into parts of northern Gaza, a decision that is likely to bring more condemnation to Israel's government. Additionally, the IDF confirmed the death of an Israeli reservist or sergeant, first class, believed to have been killed in a suspected friendly fire incident. The sergeant is a 900th soldier killed across all fronts since the war began. Now, market moves in August raised more questions than any answers just before the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Trading in August reflected U.S. President Trump and his core singing the administration's rhetoric. But too much is resting on U.S. courts, even as the latest ruling on Trump, tariffs being illegal on Friday, came post-market close, leading into the long holiday weekend. The direction for U.S. tariffs is up, not down, because the pressure on the White House from financial markets has diminished since April. But the volatility and the moves is in the dying session of the month showed September will see a legal challenge to tariffs. The big wild card would be if the Supreme Court strikes down Trump's country-specific tariffs. Now, there would be chaos in global markets, no doubt. But there are plenty of other powers at the president's disposal to impose tariffs through other means. While Trump extended the truce with China, he upped his tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. But those tariffs have brought India and China closer. Analysts now say it is no longer China plus one, but China plus India. The SCO Summit is being called an important step in that very direction. In August, gold made a remarkable comeback, even as Wall Street's momentum train hit full speed into September. The yellow metal rose to near record highs, soaring 5% during the month. Crude oil and Bitcoin took the biggest hit in August. Benchmark Brent oil fell nearly 6% on worries about crude flows. However, the other side of the argument was reflected in the dollar's decline in August. Now, Trump claims millions of dollars in revenue from tariffs. But the U.S. currency took a beating, reflecting investors' bet on who is actually winning. Now, investor caution is also driven by fresh political pressure on the Federal Reserve. Moving on to the Asia-Pacific stock markets, China's main stocks index led the gains in the region with 8% gains. The U.S.-China trade truce kept investors betting on Chinese stocks. Japanese stocks were not left behind. Japan's Nikkei closed out the month with 4% gains, and the OC index rose 2.6%. But the only exception and the most telling move is reflected in Indian stocks taking a beating from Trump's 50% tariffs. The Indian benchmark closed out August with 1.7% losses. In the Americas, Wall Street stocks hit fresh record highs during the month. The S&P 500 notched a fourth straight monthly gain. However, a tech rout weighed on sentiment before the September challenge for stocks. September has usually been a bad month for global stocks. Last week's wobble offered insights into what to expect in September. But Brazilian and Canadian stocks showed grand gains to show a different mood for these countries. Across the Atlantic, European stocks reflected the reality. The nuanced moves in benchmarks across the region showed mixed sentiment. While the UK's FTSE gained, the French CAC and German DAX ended in the red. The South African stock index was a standout with 3.4% gains. Well, what happens in the Russia-Ukraine peace talks is likely to drive European stocks in the month ahead, rather than Trump's drama on social media. When the carpet hub of India's Bhadohi, silence has replaced the steady clatter of looms. The United States, which buys nearly 60% of India's handmade carpets, has raised import duties to 50%. Now, the move has triggered mass cancellations, with 85% of orders reportedly scrapped or put on hold. Exports worth 9,600 crore rupees are at immediate risk, threatening the very heart of a 16,000 crore rupee industry. The Badawi-Mirzapur belt sustains nearly 2 million people, 800,000 directly in weaving, and 1.2 million in allied activities like dyeing and transport. For many families, weaving is a centuries-old tradition and their sole source of income. With shipments stalled, production has fallen sharply and half the workforce has already returned to their villages. Industry leaders warn that the collapse will hit women especially hard, who make up about 25% of the workforce. Exporters say India risks losing its share permanently as competitors like Turkey, Pakistan, and China step in with lower tariffs. Badawi alone accounts for 60% of India's carpet exports, leaving it most exposed. Exporters have urged the center and the Uttar Pradesh government for urgent relief. And this includes a 10% bailout package, restoration of export incentives, and support for credit. Well, without intervention, they warn a 500-year-old legacy of handmade carpets could unravel. A new $250 visa integrity fee on U.S. visitors is set to take effect on October 1st, raising the total visa cost to $442, among the highest worldwide. The move comes at a time when overseas arrivals are already sliding, raising fresh concerns for a travel industry still struggling to regain its pre-pandemic momentum. The fee adds another layer of friction for visitors from countries like Mexico, Brazil, India, and China. Travel experts warn it could deter families, students, and businesses already cautious about U.S. entry requirements. For an industry dependent on international visitors, it also threatens to drag down spending, investment, and recovery forecasts for the year ahead. The burden is expected to fall hardest on Latin America, one of the few regions showing growth this year. But in Asia, demand remains weak, and the higher charges may further discourage travel beyond the immediate impact. There are rising concerns about reciprocity, with fears that other countries may impose similar fees on American travelers, escalating the pressure on global tourism. India and China, long-time rivals locked in border disputes and power competition, are now being nudged into a cautious thaw. The trigger is the 50% tariff rate imposed on India by U.S. President Donald Trump. This mirrors Trump's pressure tactics on China and creates a rare moment of shared interest between the two Asian giants. Analysts say both India and China are navigating an unpredictable America that treats allies and adversaries with the same transactional lens. But beneath the diplomacy lies a pressing economic reality. India's trade deficit with China has surged to nearly $100 billion in the latest financial year. Now, China is India's largest trading partner after the U.S. The Global Trade Research Initiative study shows that China supplies 70% of India's critical needs. India's share in bilateral trade has also collapsed from over 40% 2 decades ago to just 11% today, underlining a dangerous overdependence. To curb the imbalance, India has rolled out a production-linked incentive scheme to boost domestic cell and electronics manufacturing. Now, recent discovery of rare earth elements in Madhya Pradesh could further reduce reliance on Beijing. Yet, supply chain realities show China remains entrenched, from Foxconn's component squeeze to curbs on rare earth exports. Experts warn that while diversification strategies like China Plus One are underway, in the short term to medium term, India's manufacturing ambitions remain tied to Chinese supply chains, making this a delicate balancing act. Moving on, 8 opposition ruled states in India have warned of massive revenue losses in the proposed tax overhaul. Now, they are demanding a 5-year compensation plan and stricter safeguards before the new tax regime is rolled out. Now, the state governments of Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, Kerala, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and West Bengal warn of revenue losses of up to 2 lakh crore rupees. The states also want a 14% guaranteed revenue growth and safeguards to ensure that businesses pass on tax cut benefits to consumers instead of profiteering. The center wants to simplify GST by reducing the current 4 slabs of 5, 12, 18, and 28% into just 2, 5 and 18%, with a new 40% levy on sin and luxury goods. The idea is to make goods cheaper and spur demand before the festive season, but opposition warns their GST revenues could fall by 15 to 20%, hitting welfare schemes and weakening fiscal autonomy. Well, to offset the shortfall, opposition is proposing a new levy on luxury and sin goods, with proceeds fully shared with them. Now, these demands will reportedly place before the GST Council meeting on September 3rd and 4th, chaired by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The centre is pushing for a rollout before Diwali, but consensus remains uncertain. And India gave a strong push to the country's nuclear energy ambitions by opening the sector to private participation. The country now targets 100 gigawatts of nuclear energy by 2047. While addressing the India-Japan Joint Economic Forum in Tokyo, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the nuclear energy sector is now being opened for the private sector. And this comes after the country had opened up the defense and space industries to the private sector. That lines up with the announcement of the nuclear mission in the union budget on February 1st. Earlier, Union Minister Jitendra Singh had called the initiative a revolutionary decision. He had said that the decision would enable the long closed and controlled nuclear sector to speed up growth and innovation with private sector engagement. Now, India has linked its growth story to clean energy goals. Prime Minister Modi said Japan's technology and India's talent can together lead the tech revolution of the century. India is rapidly moving towards clean energy, and by 2047, we have set a target of 100 gigawatt of nuclear power. He added India and Japan have agreed on a joint credit mechanism, and by leveraging it, we can cooperate for a clean and green future. Now, in the budget, research and development in small modular reactors were allocated 20,000 crore rupees. The goal was to set up 5 operating SMRs constructed indigenously by 2033. Decentralized power generation, especially in outlying areas, is anticipated to be greatly aided by these small nuclear facilities. The current nuclear capacity of India is 8,180 megawatts. Construction of 10 reactors in various Indian states is expected to increase its capacity to 22,480 megawatts by 2031-32. The new clean energy roadmap shows the country targets 100 gigawatts of nuclear energy by 2047. A U.S. appeals court ruled that most of President Trump's global tariffs were illegal. In a startling verdict on Friday before the Labor Day weekend, a panel of judges said Trump had exceeded his authority. The appeals court upheld an earlier ruling by the Court of International Trade that Trump wrongfully invoked an emergency law to impose tariffs. But the appeals court judges sent the case back to the lower court to determine if it applied to everyone affected by tariffs or just the parties involved in the case. In the meantime, the tariffs imposed were allowed to remain in place as the litigation proceeds. With the latest ruling, analysts say the case will almost certainly end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. The court said, and I'm quoting, "The statute bestows significant authority on the president to undertake a number of actions in response to a declared national emergency, but none of these actions explicitly include the power to impose tariffs, duties, or the like, or the power to tax." In response, Trump on social media said, and I'm quoting, "All tariffs are still in effect. A highly partisan appeals court incorrectly said that our tariffs should be removed, but they know the United States of America will win in the end." He added, "If these tariffs ever went away, it would be a total disaster for the country." Now, ahead of the ruling, Trump's cabinet officials had warned the court that declaring tariffs unlawful would have devastating impact on American foreign policy. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned of dangerous diplomatic embarrassment. The administration filed statements by Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the U.S. Court of Appeals before the verdict. that they were filed in support of the request that any ruling against the administration be immediately put on hold until the U.S. Supreme Court issues a final decision. Lutnick has said failing to do so would have devastating and dire consequences. But the appeals court ruled against the administration. Still, the court guided the lower court to follow a recent Supreme Court ruling on Trump's executive order on automatic birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court had ordered that judges should limit their rulings to the parties involved in the case rather than applying across the country known as universal injunctions. The scope of that verdict leaves many questions unanswered. And with that, we call a wrap to this bulletin. But don't worry, lots signs up on the other side. Coming up, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding a crucial bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the SCO Summit in Tianjin in China. We'll get you all the details on the other side of this very short break. Keep watching WION World is One.
Israel is brazening it out in Gaza. Journalists are being targeted and killed. Famine is deepening, but Netanyahu remains in denial. Houthis are shocking Israel, unleashing a deadly missile with multiple warheads. And in Turkey, a cup of coffee comes with a glimpse of destiny, blending centuries of tradition with a ritual of fortune.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Redhead Francis, only on WION. World is One.
Is it a boat? Is it a plane? Is it an EV that runs on rails? Solar cars that face off in the desert, race against time and each other. Drones that clean up Everest's muck, seed the forest and geotag whales. But on your phone there's no such luck. There's a new scam in town and you better watch out. Only on WION. World is One at these times.
YO1 Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YO1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
Então deixa vir ali para fazer transporte! Não temos tempo! Bora, transporte! Bora! Bora, vamos! Bora, vamos! Bora, vamos! Cadê o negócio aqui?
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Shivan Janna. We're bringing you all the action from Tianjin as it happens. Let's start with the headlines first. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is holding a crucial bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the SCO Summit in Tianjin. US Ambassador to NATO Matt Whitaker says that the US is giving Ukraine deeper strike capabilities to defend against Russia. The Israeli army claims a reservist was killed in a friendly fire incident in the southern Gaza Strip, bringing the number of confirmed military deaths in Israel since the start of the war to 900. Thousands of people protest against Israel's siege of Gaza on the sidelines of the Venice Film Festival, seeking to move the spotlight from movie drama to real-world trauma. Yemen's Houthi rebels vow to take revenge for the killing of their prime minister and other political leaders by Israeli airstrikes earlier this week. For the third time this year, the Yamuna River crosses its danger mark at the old railway bridge, which serves as a key observation point for tracking the river's flow. China's factory output shrank for the fifth month in a row, with August's PMI at 49.4, slightly better than July but still below the 50 growth mark. The data comes as Beijing continues trade talks with Washington ahead of the November tariff deadline. All right, viewers, we are now cutting live to Tianjin at the venue of the SCO Summit, where India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. Both leaders shook hands and are now holding a bilateral on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. Let's take a look at some of the visuals that are coming in at this hour. These are visuals that are coming in from Tianjin. And that's the handshake that we're seeing, which has now taken place in Tianjin. The last time the two leaders shook hands was in Kazan. That's where the trend started. The ball started rolling. You see National Security Advisor of India sitting next to the Indian Prime Minister as the delegation from both the countries are holding talks. The bilateral is going on. And to get a better understanding of what to expect, I'll now cut across to our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibal. He's there in Tianjin in the midst of all the action. Let's cut across to Siddhant. Siddhant, if you can hear me, we saw how the ball started rolling ever since Kazan. Give us a sense of what to expect going forward, or whatever you've picked up since you're there in the midst of it all.
Well, the first big development of the day has started. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping are holding meeting here in Tianjin, where I am, and the meeting is underway. The first visuals are in right now, and we're witnessing how both leaders having conversations, but we are yet to know what are the conversations. But we do expect a briefing by India's Foreign Ministry later in the day to give details about that big bilateral. Now, essentially, this is the second time that both the leaders are meeting in a year's time, and it is seen as a reset in India-China relationship after a gap of 4.5 years when the relationship went southwards, primarily because of the Gulf incident. But what we saw last year in Russia on the sidelines of the Kazan BRICS Summit was a bilateral meeting, something that many were expecting will not happen. And since then, there have been a lot of efforts from both sides, including high-level visits. In fact, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in India just this month. The Indian Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, the Indian Defence Minister, Rajnath Singh, the Indian NSA, all of them have been to India, have been to China from India for key SCO meetings, and it was expected at the end of the day that the Prime Minister will also travel. But there is, of course, the shadow of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's tariffs are something that is concerning for India and for China, but how much they will able to bring together, especially when China and India have more divergences than convergences. In fact, one of the key concerns from the Indian side is cross-border terrorism, and of course the issue of as to how Pakistan continues to aid abet terrorism in India, and that is something that of course is expected to be raised. But what Indian officials have made it clear that this visit to China is for a multilateral aspect, and this is the key focus from their side. How much it will take to reset in the relationship is something that is to be known only when there are deliverables, especially on the ground at the border. But I can say just for India, once bitten, twice shy. That's the case for India. And of course, while India is facing the wrath of Donald Trump's tariffs, India will not be keen to be very close to China so far because of China's alignment with Pakistan. So there are several dynamics at play when it comes to a global and regional order. But one thing India has been going on, the mantra India has been carrying forward, is multipolar world and multipolar Asia.
Siddhant, thanks so much for making all that very concise for all our viewers as well. We'll be coming back to you for more details as they come in from Tianjin. You're in the heart of the action, and we are tracking all those developments. As of now, there is a bilateral going on between the two delegations from both India and China. Both leaders are there. We'll discuss this a little forward and take this forward with our guest who's joining us live, Ambassador Meera Shankar. Ambassador Shankar is a former Indian envoy to the US. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. Siddhant made some very key points. There are more divergences than there are convergences when it comes to India and China. What I'd also like to add to that is that handshake in Kazan happened much before Trump 2.0. So regardless of how much that Trump shadow looms over both nations in terms of tariffs, there has been an effort which started much before that, to come together. But once bitten, twice shy. What do you expect post this bilateral, which is happening before the summit even started? Ambassador Shankar, we're unable to hear you. If you can, I think you'll at least need to. All right, we'll try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar there. All right, Ambassador, we'll come back to you. I believe you heard me and would like to hear from you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Please go ahead. All right. We'll try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar. It'll be we'll be keen to hear how she sees these developments going forward. But just to reiterate all that we did discuss right now with our Assistant Director for Foreign Affairs, who's there in Tianjin, this meeting, this bilateral, which also holds India's National Security Advisor sitting right next to the Indian Prime Minister, as you can see in the visuals as well. The two leaders, they've already had that handshake. The previous handshake in Kazan had set the ball rolling. But of course, there are a lot of gaps. There have been a lot of gaps. The recent history, the past history is not been too great. But there have been enough efforts now to get the two sides towards more convergences that there have been in the past. Just to give you a better understanding of where we stand right now, Indian Prime Minister is in China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, for those of you. And the bilateral between the two leaders is currently going on. All right, let me now once again try to reconnect with Ambassador Shankar. She's there with us now. Ambassador Shankar, my question essentially meant, you know, what we've seen so far in the recent history, but then there was a change after Kazan when the two leaders shook hands. Now they've shaken hands again. What do you foresee going forward? All right. We'll come back to Ambassador Shankar because we're keen to know what she feels about it. Some technical issues, they keep happening. We'll come back to this. And the SCO Summit is currently going on. For anyone who's just tuning in, the Indian Prime Minister is in China. It's the first visit of the Indian Prime Minister to China in 7 years. A big step forward for both countries to come together, India and China. Enough tensions have prevailed since 2020, since Galwan, but now things seem to be on the mend. Let's shift focus to Brazil for now. As per reports, Brazil is calling for an emergency BRICS summit, and it is alarmed by the United States' rising trade barriers and global actions that threaten multipolarity. Tariffs of up to 50% have been imposed on imports from both Brazil and India, jeopardizing key sectors and diplomatic ties. Now, Brazil reportedly is now seeking to rally BRICS leaders for an urgent meeting, aiming to counter US-driven disruption and to defend a more balanced world order. The ongoing Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO Summit, it offers a tense backdrop with Russia, China and India all navigating a climate of increased tension with Washington, especially owing to the tariffs which have come from Trump. US relations with these global powers are being hampered by the sanctions, by the tariffs and fierce policy disagreements. As Brazil pushes for a united BRICS response, geopolitical fault lines are only widening. Emerging powers now gather, seeking to shape a more inclusive and resilient system, one that challenges singular dominance and strives for genuine multipolar balance. Now, the original BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India and China, BRIC as they held their first summit in 2009. 8 years after former Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill coined the acronym for this group of emerging economies, he said would challenge the G7 group of rich countries in the future. South Africa became the S in that BRICS grouping. That happened 2 years later, and the club now comprises of 11 countries, and that includes, apart from the BRICS, it also includes Indonesia, Iran and Saudi Arabia, as well as a further 9 partner countries, including Malaysia, Nigeria and Thailand. Anti-asylum protests continue to disrupt the socio-political landscape of the United Kingdom. British police arrested 5 people at a latest protest in London, where a group of masked men attempted to enter a hotel housing asylum seekers. Now, according to London's Metropolitan Police Force, 2 groups of anti-asylum protesters, they marched to the Crown Plaza Hotel near Heathrow Airport before some demonstrators even tried to break in. 2 police officers have suffered minor injuries in this incident, and this comes just a day after the British government won a court ruling that will prevent asylum seekers from being evicted from the hotels, which is at the center of most of these anti-asylum demonstrations. Just last week, the court mandated the removal of asylum seekers from the Bell Hotel in Epping after a 32-year-old Syrian national named Mohammed Sharwark, who resided at this hotel. He was charged with sexual assault. And this protest follows a series of confrontations, most recently in Epping and Liverpool, where large numbers of anti-immigration protesters and counter-protesters faced off in the city centre, with police forced to step in to keep the two sides apart. A stark sign of mounting tensions over immigration.
Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here.
Now, as per media reports, concerns about immigration have only been rising to the top of the political agenda in Britain after an increase in migrants using small boats to reach the country. According to government figures, more than 32,000 migrants were being housed in around 200 hotels across the country at the end of June. A recent YouGov poll for The Times found that 71% of voters believe that the Prime Minister is handling the asylum hotel issue badly. And that includes fairly badly, very badly, or total badly. And there are 22% who say that he is managing it well, and that includes fairly well, very well, and well. And 17% are unsure about it. The government says that it will reform the asylum appeals process to speed up the decisions, reduce the backlog of more than 106,000 cases, and phase out hotel use altogether. Now, under this plan, an independent body of adjudicators will be created to handle these appeals, where wait times currently exceed a year for more than 51,000 cases. And European Union foreign ministers met in Copenhagen on Saturday, but the talks exposed deep divisions over the war in Gaza. Some countries called for stronger economic pressure on Israel, while others made clear that they would not support such moves. The split has left the bloc struggling to form a common strategy.
It's clear that member states disagree on how to get Israeli government to change course. The options are clear and remain on the table. We have presented an option paper, but the problem is that not all EU member states are on board.
Denmark warned that Israel's expanding settlements are undermining the possibility of a two-state solution and said inaction could strengthen extremism.
Israel is right now undermining the two-state solution. And taking action against that is not strengthening Hamas. You could argue the opposite. Because if we do not intervene, if we do not have any actions, then we give room to the most extremist environments at both sides of the conflict.
EU ministers also urged the United States to reconsider blocking Palestinian representatives from taking part in the upcoming United Nations General Assembly. Beyond Gaza, the meeting turned to Russia's war in Ukraine, with member states asked to submit proposals for a new package of sanctions.
Ministers discussed the possible building blocks for the next sanction package. Options include secondary sanctions, those backing Russia's war, as well as import bans and tariffs on Russian products. Efforts against shadow fleet ships must also be stepped up.
Now, in the end, Europe left Copenhagen without consensus on Gaza, but with a renewed push for unity on both West Asia and Ukraine. A deadly strike has upended the balance in West Asia. Yet again, the Houthis' prime minister is killed. This happened in a dramatic Israeli missile attack, and Yemen erupts in rage thereafter, vowing a fierce revenge. With thunderous force, Israeli warplanes blasted a site where the senior Houthi leadership had assembled for a meeting in the capital Sana'a.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah, شركة النفط الآن بتضرب شركة النفط الآن.
On Thursday, Israeli forces had said that they struck a Houthi regime military target. The Yemen-based rebels have now confirmed that their prime minister is dead. Ghalib Nasir al-Rahawi is the most senior official known to have died in a series of attacks during the war. And tens of thousands of Yemenis gathered in the Al Sabin Square in the capital Sana'a and various locations in the Houthi-controlled areas to protest against Israeli airstrikes. The protesters say that they are opposing Israeli airstrikes in Yemen and the military operations in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and express their solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Israel's bombings and brutal aggression will not shake the stance of the Houthi armed forces and the Yemeni people in supporting the Palestinian people. International law clearly stipulates that in the face of genocide, any country has an obligation to intervene.
The Houthis have appointed Deputy Prime Minister Mohammad Ahmad Miftah as interim Prime Minister following Rahawi's death. For months, the Houthis have fired their own missiles towards Israel, which is about 2,000 kilometers away in distance. Since October of 2023, Houthi forces have carried out near-daily attacks against Israeli-linked shipping in the Red Sea, as well as targets in Israel proper, such as air and sea ports, launching more than 70 missiles and 22 drones at Israel since the month of March this year. Israel's jets have hit Houthi targets before, and the Americans too have launched coordinated airstrikes against the Houthi hideouts. President Prabowo Subianto has cancelled his visit to China amid ongoing nationwide protests. Prabowo was among the 26 heads of states invited by Chinese President Xi Jinping to attend the Victory Day parade on the 3rd of September. The protests, the first major test for Prabowo's nearly year-old government, began in Jakarta over lawmakers' pay this week and worsened after a police vehicle hit and killed a motorcycle rider. As a result, the violent protests that started from capital Jakarta in Indonesia have now spread to the entire country. Protests in Makassar, the biggest city on the eastern island of Sulawesi, descended into chaos outside the provincial and city council buildings, which were both set on fire as demonstrators hurled rocks and Molotov cocktails.
Ada pemadam di belakang.
Smouldering debris was seen falling from the roof of the city council building, surrounded by palm trees, as flames still flickered in charred cars. At least 3 people were killed in the Makassar city council fire. Hundreds of students in Surabaya were also seen rallying outside the East Java police headquarters.
For any students and other people who join the protest, please do not commit any violence like this.
The presidential spokesperson, Prasetyo Hadi, is in a video statement said that the president wanted to continue monitoring directly and seek the best solutions. He also added that another reason behind the cancellation was a United Nations General Assembly session in the month of September. In light of the protest, short video app TikTok, which is owned by China's ByteDance, cited escalating violence in Indonesia, said that it had suspended its live feature in Indonesia for a few days. Meanwhile, police said that they had detained 7 officers for questioning in connection with gig driver's death. The National Police Chief told a news conference on Saturday that the officers would face an ethics trial that could take a week. And this comes as President Prabowo urged calm and even ordered an investigation into the driver's death, and that the officers involved should be held accountable. Prabowo has pledged fast, state-driven growth, but has already faced out protests against widespread government budget cuts. And 3 Scottish brothers have scripted history by becoming the first team to row unsupported from South America all the way to Australia, setting a world record and raising over $950,000 for clean water projects. Take a look.
Last 3 days physically have probably been up there with the hardest because we were pushing so hard to get across the East Australian Current. Well, first, through the East Australian Current and then through the Great Barrier Reef, and those two combined, we were just going at a snail's pace and morale was low, and physically we were having to row 3 up for about 16 hours non-stop.
All right, viewers, that's a wrap on this bulletin. Coming up after a short break, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and this is only the second bilateral meet between the two leaders since last year's Kazan BRICS Summit. What comes out of this meeting? We'll bring you all the details from Tianjin directly. This and a lot more after a short break.
Israel is brazening it out in Gaza. Journalists are being targeted and killed. Famine is deepening, but Netanyahu remains in denial. Houthis are shocking Israel, unleashing a deadly missile with multiple warheads. And in Turkey, a cup of coffee comes with a glimpse of destiny, blending centuries of tradition with a ritual of fortune.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Redhead Francis, only on WION. World is one.
On Wings this week, we highlight this week's Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. We also visit the Symphony Orchestra of India and experience a fall season performance. We also cover exciting and vibrant festivals across the world. Only on WION, World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Chennai to Hyderabad. Those were some snippets from around India of vibrant celebrations on Ganesh Chaturthi. The 10-day festival marks the arrival on earth of the iconic Hindu deity Ganesha. Hindu tradition has it that Ganesha is a starting point for all good things. On that note, let's begin our show. Hello and welcome. I'm Samiksha Srivastava and you are watching Inside South Asia. On Tianjin as Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to China for the SCO Summit. A crucial meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping is on the cards. The big question is a new diplomatic warmth between Beijing and New Delhi over the last several months the start of something lasting, or just another tactical pause in a rivalry that's defined by mistrust? Can the elephant and the dragon really tango?
Readying for the big stage, Prime Minister Modi's visit to China on August 31st will be his first to the country in 7 years. His meeting with President Xi there could turn out to be pivotal, tracking the build-up to understand how and where things stand. Modi's bilateral meeting with Xi is an opportunity for both sides to rebuild trust for a mutually beneficial partnership in areas like trade, investment, and emerging technologies. India will expect China to address some of its trade restrictions related to manpower and equipment that impact Indian manufacturing and deliver on the promise to import more to reduce the $100 billion trade deficit. China will expect a transparent and non-discriminatory business environment for its companies. August 19th, just about a week back, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Delhi. The shot in the arm in a blue-hot, blue-cold relationship going back decades. Handshakes, smiles, tangible signs of progress. For the first time since the Galwan clash in 2020, both sides agreed to move on two tracks: talks on border issues as well as trade and business, together. The diplomatic tour yielded some concrete outcomes too, building major bridges.
We've started the process of getting back on track onto the relationship between India and China, which existed before 2020 and before Galwan happened. But there are still, issues to be sorted out. We have restarted the de-escalation process on the border, which is the main issue as far as India is concerned. And then, of course, we've agreed to resume flights between India and China. We've also started issuing visas for Chinese businessmen, and later on it will be fully operational, this whole process. And of course, the Chinese have allowed, Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. 3 border points have been reopened, I would say, for border trade, which was suspended.
This thaw began last October in Kazan, Russia, on the sidelines of a historic BRICS summit. The ice after Galwan began to crack. Even now, though, the trust factor remains a fragile commodity. History looms strong still and the scars run deep. The Galwan clashes of 2020, the 2017 Doklam standoff, the Nathula clashes in 1967, and that unforgettable India-China war of 1962, where Beijing was accused of backstab. The dance is not just about Delhi and Beijing. The return of Donald Trump has changed the global rhythm. New tariffs, 25%, then 50% on Indian goods. Trump's stepped-up trade war also extends to China. For both New Delhi and Beijing, pressure from Washington is a push to look closer at each other.
What has happened recently between China and India is a tactical adjustment, something which the Chinese also want, given the fact that they have too many other challenges as far as the United States are concerned. And in order to rise, in the future, China will need a neutral India, if not, a benign India.
And then there's Pakistan, China's quote-unquote all-weather friend. On issues like Pakistan, China has rarely stood with India. The trust deficit remains very real.
In fact, the last Operation Sindoor activities saw a complete dependence on the Chinese information systems, the ISR as we call it, intelligence, and also the equipment which was supplied by the Chinese. The Pakistan is dependent on that on a very large extent. And going forward, I don't see that receding, because the Chinese have found a good way to have a proxy which can actually fight the war without them getting involved.
So where does that leave the elephant-dragon tango? Yes, they are dancing again, taking careful steps and making cautious moves. But they are far from partners just yet. Can the Modi-Xi meet in Tianjin improve compatibilities?
Trump's tariff tirade against a range of Indian goods has taken effect, and labor-intensive industries like textile exports are preparing to feel the heat of a whopping 50% tariff slab, which is the highest among Asian countries. So the question is, how are textile exporters preparing for the impact of these duties? Here's a ground report.
Across India's textile export hubs, it appears to be business as usual on the surface. But uneasiness hangs in the air. With 50% US tariffs taking effect on Indian export goods, this labor-intensive industry is bracing for impact. The sky-high rate leaves India facing a likely slump in trade with its largest export market in the US. Several export businesses are contemplating a halt in operations, unclear on what the future holds and how long they can sustain. For others carrying on, uncertainty looms large, with increased competition from other countries in South Asia alone.
We have so much competition from other countries like China, Vietnam, Bangladesh. So their duties are less, around 20%. China is 30%, Bangladesh is 20%, Vietnam they got a deal of 19%. So that way, 20% versus 50%, this is too much for India. And definitely our buyers are, why they will buy Indian goods, if they are getting something cheaper from other countries. And that's a huge challenge for Indian manufacturers, Indian exporters, textile exporters.
Negotiations with the US standing postponed. The Indian government is looking to diversify trade. Plans are underway to initiate outreach programs in 40 countries, including key markets like the UK, Japan, and South Korea. But exporters are hesitant of diversification, unsure of how much export can these alternative trade partners absorb. For some textile exporters, US accounts for anything between 50 to 80% of their business. With each passing day, the stakes are higher. Thousands of jobs are on the line. There is little hope that diversification and domestic consumption can mitigate the billions in losses.
Those markets are not as big as US. So I don't think that, they are going to have so much consumption. They all together cannot be, at par with US consumptions. So this is a big challenge if you see from the Indian side. And definitely we expect that, the government should do something diplomatically to settle this issue. Otherwise, a lot of exporters are there, a lot of issues are there. Many factories, hundreds and hundreds of factories are dependent on US exports.
But the textile export fraternity holds on to hope that the US and India, two countries with long-standing trade relations, can find a way back to the negotiating table, and soon.
Big effect, I would say temporarily, for a few weeks or months, then things will becoming normal because the importers, brands will adjust to their price levels, because few things are like handmade, crochet, embroideries, Indian handwriting, they cannot avoid not to buy. So everybody has to adjust in between the pricing and things will become normal.
With American tariffs taking effect on Indian goods, there is a sense of uncertainty within exporters, markets and industries such as this one. But exporters are hoping that a quick solution is reached, and there is a sense of urgency in the air as unpredictability surrounds exporters, particularly in the textile industry. Now the ramifications are huge and the trickle-down effect is on everyone, right from owners down to the laborers and daily wage earners. There is still hope that amid all the unpredictability and high competition in the global market, that both US and India will reach some sort of consensus and hopefully a lower tariff rate in the future. But for exporters, timing is of essence. With video journalist Joy, this is Dharamjot Kaur for WION World is One.
It's 8 years this week since the mass exodus of thousands of Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar, and they're entering the miseries of the world's largest refugee camp in Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar. They rally to demand justice, citizenship and a safe return to their homeland, all of which have taken on dimensions of distant pipe dream.
Tens of thousands of Rohingya refugees in Kutupalong Camp, Cox's Bazar. Their placards and banners raise a call that is itself battered and bruised, an end to the nightmares of their refugee life. The slogan is simple but empty. One word: justice. For them, justice means recognition as citizens of Myanmar.
We are such an oppressed community. We are asking the world for our justice. If the government of Bangladesh wants to take us to Myanmar, we want to be equal to other ethnic groups. The way they are citizens of that country, we want to be the same citizens as them.
The rally marks what these people call Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day, when thousands had fled Myanmar's brutal military crackdown. More than 1 million Rohingya now live in camps in Bangladesh. Conditions are harsh. The U.S. winding down aid has hit them hard, and hopes of returning home are dim. On this 8th anniversary, diplomats, UN officials, and Bangladesh's interim government visited Cox's Bazar and met refugees to hear their demands and discuss their future. The biggest of these calls is for repatriation, a return to their motherland Myanmar. an issue international agencies admit is still nowhere in sight. Improving life for these Rohingya is the only real but distant goal they can push for.
We also have to plan and ensure that here in the camps, which we're visiting today, that the services can continue, that we have the funding to be able to continue to support critical areas, from ensuring that they have food and gas to cook the food, to just being able to ensure the children stay in schools.
It's a people living in limbo. 8 years, who knows how many more. Their demand remains unchanged: recognition, citizenship, and the right to return home with dignity. Until then, Cox's Bazar remains their reluctant refuge.
Now let's take a look at what else is making headlines in our Inside South Asia wrap.
Germany is set to lift its months-long ban on the entry of vulnerable Afghan nationals. It had pledged to admit around 2,000 Afghans approved for relocation to Germany under a program for those deemed at risk under Taliban rule have been stranded in neighboring Pakistan for months, after Berlin froze the scheme amid a pledge to curb migration. The decision comes following several lawsuits by groups and dozens of affected Afghans challenging the freeze.
Sri Lanka's former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was arrested on the 23rd of August over allegations that he misused state funds while in office, was granted bail on Tuesday. The case relates to a September 2023 visit to the United Kingdom, where he and his wife attended a University of Wolverhampton ceremony and allegedly used public funds for their travel and security. Ranil Wickremesinghe is the first Sri Lankan former head of state to be arrested and among the most prominent political leaders being investigated for corruption under President Anura Kumara Dissanayake. The 76-year-old former president joined the court hearing remotely as he was shifted to intensive care at Colombo National Hospital.
Nepal has officially joined the International Big Cat Alliance, or IBCA, an India-led global initiative to protect 7 species of big cats. The IBCA is a multi-country, multi-agency coalition of over 90 big cat range countries and non-range countries with an interest in big cat conservation. Last year, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the International Big Cat Alliance for global conservation of 7 big cats, namely tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, cheetah, jaguar, and puma. Nepal succeeded in almost tripling its tiger population to 355 in 2022 from a mere 121 in 2009.
Shifting focus now to torrential rains and floods that have battered parts of India and Pakistan. Rains and flooding struck the Kartarpur Sahib Gurudwara in Pakistan, one of Sikhism's holiest shrines. Kartarpur Sahib is located 4.5 kilometers away from the India-Pakistan border and is visible to devotees in India. 3 transboundary rivers in the east of Pakistan have swollen to dangerously high levels. In India, fierce rains have claimed dozens of lives across various states. A landslide near Vaishno Devi Shrine in Jammu struck havoc. Take a look at our next report.
One of India's most prominent pilgrimages, Vaishno Devi Yatra, temporarily suspended on Tuesday afternoon. Heavy rains over the past 3 days triggered massive landslides in the Ardh-Kuwari area of Riyasi district.
We have got information about a landslide in the Indraprastha area in which some people have died and some are injured. Rescue operations are underway. 5 bodies have been brought into Community Health Center Katra. and we have information about 10-11 injured persons.
Suddenly, lightning struck, which was followed by a mudslide and boulders started rolling down the hills. A tin shed slid down and hit me here. It threw me back. Then a large boulder came rolling down, and at 10 to 12 of us got trapped under it.
Quick response rescue teams rushed to the affected areas in the Union Territory. Communication lines for millions were cut off. There was widespread damage to optical fibers of all service providers. Intense rains left the Tawi and Chenab rivers overflowing well beyond their danger levels. Cave-ins on the Tawi bridge left cars teetering, panic and chaos grabbing center stage. In Doda district, rising waters of the Chenab River brought the Doda bridge under severe threat, sparking fears of structural damage. Across the district, road connectivity was disrupted due to landslides and falling boulders, which cut off many villages. Several flights were affected due to poor visibility. Dozens of trains were cancelled.
It started to flood from 3 a.m. At least 4 houses have been washed away today. Yesterday, 7 houses were washed away. Till now, around 20 houses have been washed away.
Authorities deployed vehicles with loudspeakers to warn residents against venturing near water bodies, appealing to people to remain indoors.
We have rescued almost all those living nearby the Chenab River. If anyone is left out, we appeal that they leave as soon as possible to higher grounds. To the people of Doda City, Baidarwa and Kishtwar, we request them not to leave their houses under any circumstances.
A few days earlier, on the 24th of August, a bridge over the Seher Khad River near the Jammu-Pathankot National Highway in Kathua district was ravaged by currents from the river below. At least 60 people have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir in August due to the floods. On the 23rd of August, heavy rain followed by a mudslide hit the Tharali town of Chamoli district in Uttarakhand. And this was one of a series of landslide incidents across the state, including Tharali village in Uttarkashi. In Himachal Pradesh too, incessant rainfall has wreaked havoc. The Bias River here is swollen well above the danger mark. Infrastructure has taken a major hit. In Kullu district alone, 130 roads have been closed due to damage. Connectivity has been severely affected. In Arunachal Pradesh, a landslide struck the Balipara-Charidwar Tawang National Highway in Dirang. Visuals show boulders rolling down hills, hitting vehicles as people run in panic to save themselves. Scientists and weather forecasters have pinned the blame for floods and landslides in recent years on climate change. Year after year, a disaster happens during the monsoon season. How long will it take till we become climate prepared and manage these tragedies?
That's all we have in our show today, but before we wrap up, some colourful visuals from Colombo as the International Kite Festival made a comeback after 6 years. Take a look and I will see you next week.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
On Wings this week, we highlight this week's Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations. We also visit the Symphony Orchestra of India and experience a fall season performance. We also cover exciting and vibrant festivals across the world. Only on WION, World is One.
Israel is brazening it out in Gaza. Journalists are being targeted and killed. Famine is deepening, but Netanyahu remains in denial. Houthis are shocking Israel, unleashing a deadly missile with multiple warheads. And in Turkey, a cup of coffee comes with a glimpse of destiny, blending centuries of tradition with a ritual of fortune.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Redhead Francis, only on WION. World is One.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION, World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, नमस्कार। मानसून के इस मौसम में प्राकृतिक आपदाएं देश की कसौटी कर रही हैं। पिछले कुछ हफ्तों में हमने बाढ़ और भूस्खलन का बड़ा कहर देखा है। कहीं घर उजड़ गए, कहीं खेत डूब गए, परिवार के परिवार उजड़ गए। पानी के तेज बहाव में कहीं पुल बह गए, सड़कें बह गई, लोगों का जीवन संकट में फंस गया। इन घटनाओं ने हर हिंदुस्तानी को दुखी किया है। जिन परिवारों ने अपने प्रियजन खोए, उनका दर्द हम सबका दर्द है। जहां भी संकट आया, वहां के लोगों को बचाने के लिए हमारे एनडीआरएफ, एसडीआरएफ के जवान, अन्य सुरक्षा बल, हर कोई दिन रात जुटे रहे। जवानों ने तकनीक का सहारा भी लिया है। थर्मल कैमरे, लाइव डिटेक्टर, स्नीफर डॉग्स और ड्रोन सर्विलेंस ऐसे अनेक आधुनिक संसाधनों के सहारे राहत कार्य में तेजी लाने की भरपूर कोशिश की गई। इस दौरान हेलीकॉप्टर से राहत सामग्री पहुंचाई गई, घायलों को एयरलिफ्ट किया गया। आपदा की घड़ी में सेना मददगार बनकर सामने आई। स्थानीय लोग, सामाजिक कार्यकर्ता, डॉक्टर, प्रशासन, संकट की इस घड़ी में सभी ने हर संभव प्रयास किया। मैं ऐसे हर नागरिक को हृदय से धन्यवाद देता हूं, जिन्होंने इस कठिन समय में मानवीयता को सबसे ऊपर रखा हुआ है। मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, बाढ़ और बारिश की इस तबाही के बीच जम्मू कश्मीर ने 2 बहुत खास उपलब्धियां भी हासिल की हैं। इन पर ज्यादा लोगों का ध्यान नहीं गया, लेकिन जब आप उन उपलब्धियों के बारे में जानेंगे तो आपको बहुत खुशी होगी। जम्मू कश्मीर के पुलवामा के एक स्टेडियम में रिकॉर्ड संख्या में लोग इकट्ठा हुए। यहां पुलवामा का पहला डे नाइट क्रिकेट मैच खेला गया। पहले ये होना असंभव था, लेकिन अब मेरा देश बदल रहा है। ये मैच रॉयल प्रीमियर लीग का हिस्सा है, जिसमें जम्मू कश्मीर की अलग अलग टीमें खेल रही हैं। इतने सारे लोग, खासकर युवा, पुलवामा में रात के समय हजारों की तादाद में क्रिकेट का आनंद लेते हुए, ये नजारा वाकई देखने लायक था। साथियों, दूसरा आयोजन जिसने ध्यान खींचा वो है देश में हुआ पहला खेलो इंडिया वाटर स्पोर्ट्स फेस्टिवल, और वो भी श्रीनगर की डल झील पर हुआ। सचमुच ऐसा उत्सव आयोजित करने के लिए ये कितनी खास जगह है। इसका उद्देश्य है जम्मू कश्मीर में वाटर स्पोर्ट्स को और लोकप्रिय बनाना। इसमें पूरे भारत से 800 से अधिक एथलीट्स ने हिस्सा लिया। महिला एथलीट्स भी पीछे नहीं रही, उनकी भागीदारी भी लगभग पुरुषों के बराबर थी। मैं उन सभी खिलाड़ियों को बधाई देना चाहता हूं जिन्होंने इसमें भाग लिया। विशेष बधाई मध्य प्रदेश को, जिसने सबसे ज्यादा मेडल जीते। उसके बाद हरियाणा और उड़ीसा का स्थान रहा। जम्मू कश्मीर की सरकार और वहां की जनता की आत्मीयता और मेहमान नवाजी की मैं भूरी भूरी प्रशंसा करता हूं। साथियों, इस आयोजन से जुड़े अनुभव को आप तक पहुंचाने के लिए मैंने सोचा है कि ऐसे 2 खिलाड़ियों से भी बात करूं जिन्होंने इसमें हिस्सा लिया। उनमें से एक है ओडिशा की रश्मिता साहू और दूसरे हैं श्रीनगर के मोहसिन अली। आइए सुनते हैं वो क्या कहते हैं। रश्मिता जी नमस्ते।
नमस्ते सर।
जय जगन्नाथ।
जय जगन्नाथ सर।
रश्मिता जी, सबसे पहले तो आपको खेल जगत में सफलता के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई।
थैंक यू सर।
रश्मिता, हमारे श्रोता आपके बारे में और आपकी खेल यात्रा के बारे में जानने के लिए बहुत उत्सुक है। मैं भी बहुत उत्सुक हूँ, बताइए।
सर मैं रश्मिता साहू हूँ, उड़ीसा से, और मैं कैनोइंग प्लेयर हूँ। मैं 2017 से कोर्स ज्वाइन किया था, कैनोइंग शुरू किया था, और मैं नेशनल लेवल में नेशनल चैंपियनशिप और नेशनल गेम्स में पार्टिसिपेट किया हूँ। मेरा 41 मेडल्स है, 13 गोल्ड, 14 सिल्वर और 14 ब्रॉन्ज मेडल सर।
इस खेल की रुचि कैसे बनी? सबसे पहले किसने आपको इस तरफ प्रेरित किया? आपके परिवार में खेल का वातावरण है क्या?
नहीं सर, मैं जिस गांव से आती हूँ उसमें खेल का कोई ये नहीं था। तो इधर नदी में बोटिंग हो रहा था, तो ऐसे स्विमिंग के लिए गया था। तो ऐसे मैं और मेरा दोस्त लोग ऐसे स्विमिंग कर रहा था, तो एक बोट गया है कैनोइंग काइकिंग का। तो मेरे को उसके बारे में कुछ पता नहीं था, तो मैंने मेरा दोस्त को पूछा ये क्या है। तो दोस्त ने बताया कि उधर जगतपुर में साई स्पोर्ट्स सेंटर है, उसमें खेल का होता है, उसमें मैं भी जाने वाली हूँ। मेरे को बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग लगा। तो ये क्या है, मुझे पता भी नहीं था। ये तो पानी में बच्चे लोग कैसे करते हैं, बोटिंग करते हैं। मैं उसको बोला कि मुझे भी जाना है, कैसे कैसे जाना है मुझे भी बताओ। तो उधर जाके बात करो बोला है। फिर मैं तुरंत घर में जाके पापा मेरे को जाना है, पापा मेरे को जाना है। फिर पापा लोग ठीक है लेके आया। उस टाइम ट्रायल तो नहीं था। फिर कोच लोग ने बोला कि ट्रायल फरवरी में होता है, फरवरी मार्च में, आप उस टाइम ट्रायल के टाइम में आ जाओ। फिर मैं ट्रायल के टाइम में आया।
अच्छा रश्मिता, कश्मीर में हुए खेलो इंडिया वाटर स्पोर्ट्स फेस्टिवल में आपका स्वयं का अनुभव कैसा रहा? पहली बार कश्मीर गई थी?
हाँ सर, मैं पहली बार कश्मीर गई थी। हम लोग को उधर फर्स्ट खेलो इंडिया वाटर स्पोर्ट्स फेस्टिवल आयोजित किया गया था। उसमें मेरा 2 इवेंट था, सिंगल 200 मीटर और 500 मीटर डबल में, और मैं दोनों में गोल्ड मेडल हासिल किया हूँ सर।
अरे वाह, दोनों में लाई हो।
यस सर।
बहुत बहुत बधाई।
थैंक यू सर।
अच्छा रश्मिता, वाटर स्पोर्ट्स के अलावा आपकी क्या हॉबीज हैं?
सर वाटर स्पोर्ट्स के अलावा सर मेरे को रनिंग बहुत अच्छा लगता है। जब भी मैं छुट्टी में जाती हूँ तब मैं रनिंग के लिए जाती हूँ। मेरा जो पुराना फील्ड है उधर मैं पहले थोड़ा सा फुटबॉल खेलना सीखी थी, तो उधर जब भी जाती थी मैं बहुत रनिंग करती हूँ, और मैं फुटबॉल भी खेलती हूँ सर, थोड़ा बहुत।
मतलब खेल आपके रगों में है।
हाँ सर, मैं जब फर्स्ट क्लास से 10th क्लास तक जब स्कूल में था, तो मैं जो भी पार्टिसिपेट करता था उसमें सब में फर्स्ट होता था, चैंपियन होता था सर।
रश्मिता, जो लोग आपकी तरह खेलों में आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं, अगर उनको कोई संदेश देना है तो आप क्या दोगी?
सर बहुत सारे बच्चे उनको